This is the Temporomandibular Jaw Relations Appointment course, and we abbreviate that at the Atlanta Dental Group, JRT, Jaw Relations Temporomandibular. It's getting the patients correct bite identified and recorded. In other words, we are moving the lower jaw around to a different bite position than their natural bite position. Their natural bite position is called maximum intercuspation, where their teeth fit together. But when their teeth fit together, it crushes one side or both sides of the back of the joint. And we are going to determine a more harmonious bite position, different from the natural one. That word natural is a problem, isn't it? Because you say natural bite. Well, natural cancer, it's a problem. So this goes over this appointment where we determine the bite position, and then we record it with wax, and then we transfer that information to a Goletti Articulator, which is a machine that holds the bite in place, our bite, so that we can make a dental appliance for this patient to wear. The purpose of the JRT appointment is to determine the best possible jaw position for a temporomandibular disorder patient, this particular patient, and to record this doctor determined, I make it, I determine it, therapeutic bite position, therapy, we're doing therapy. So therapeutic comes from therapy. Bite means when they bite down into my position versus their maximum intercuspation where all the teeth fit together. It's a different position. The therapeutic bite position. To record the doctor-determined therapeutic bite position so that a TMD treatment appliance can be made later. So this is the beginning of treatment where I determine the best possible position of the jaw are recorded in a wax bite. Then we put the upper and lower casts on the Goletti Articulator, which holds it in place. And then we make a bite appliance, a diagnostic appliance. Diagnose means to find something out. You go to the doctor with a problem. He is going to diagnose what the problem is. So the appliance is a diagnostic appliance. In other words, to find out if this is the right position. So I'm making an educated guess, but I'm going to verify, find the truth, that this is indeed the correct bite position, and most of the time I'm correct, and I get it. Very, very few times have I had to go back and change the bite position and make a new appliance. We're learning words and phrases and the terms of things, so it's important to know that the TMD appliance we use in our office is called a mandibular, lower, mandible, orthopedic, having to do with the relationship of bone against bone, repositioning a new position appliance. The TMD appliance we use in our office is called the Mandibular Orthopedic Repositioning Appliance, abbreviated MORA, M-O-R-A. It positions the patient's mandible, lower jaw, in its optimum or very best three-dimensional position relative to the maxilla. When we talk about three dimensions, if you remember, straight line has one dimension. A flat surface has two dimensions. You have to measure two sides. And then three dimensions is a third dimension. It's like a box. Three dimensions is a physical thing, not a flat plane. So three dimensions means that mandible could be moved to the left, to the right, forward, back, up or down. Those are three dimensions. So the MORA positions the patient's mandible in its optimum, what we believe is its optimum best three-dimensional position relative to the maxilla. Relative meaning relations. The maxilla, the upper jaw, and the mandible, the lower jaw, have a relationship. And we change the relations when we make an appliance that fits in between the maxilla and mandible. We are preventing the maxilla and mandible from coupling together, biting together, because we put something in between them. And so we are changing how the upper jaw and the lower jaw are positioned relative to one another. So one of the things that the dental assistant must do, and it's almost always crazy that I would say, 90% of the time I'm asking for something extra because the assistant forgot something. And so you should memorize this list so that when I walk in, everything that's needed is right there in front of me. I don't have to ask and wait. If you think that maybe in a 1 hour appointment you forget about 3 or 4 things and I have to ask, so I'm asking 3 or 4 times for something I shouldn't ask for, and each time I ask for something I have to wait. So I might ask, can I have the base plate wax, please? And then you go get it and come back, and it may be 30 seconds, half a minute, or a minute. So if I'm doing it 4 times, 4 or 5 minutes, maybe let's say 5 minutes in an appointment, I'm being distracted, asked for things that I shouldn't have to ask for, and delayed. And that's 5 minutes each hour. In an 8-hour day, it's 40 minutes of delays. That's 40 minutes of delays in an 8-hour day is a huge number. I could get some work done doing other things during that 40 minutes. Your job is to make sure everything's there and ready, so the appointment will progress on. You need to understand the appointment and the materials and each one of the materials so that you can assist more and more as you get better and better. So what are the materials needed for the JRT appointment? First of all, a Goletti Articulator. It has to be immaculately clean with no acrylic, with no stone, beautiful spanking, shining, clean Goletti Articulator, and you need to learn how to use it and play with it. A maxillary master die stone cast with a base. The base has to be specifically for the Goletti Articulator. It's the yellow base. The other day someone did it with a much bigger base. Now I know they're going to have to go to the model trimmer, and I'm going to have to pay them to trim it, when if they just put it in the yellow base, they wouldn't have to trim it. And it's just a waste of time, waste of material. It's just everything's a waste. The mandibular master meaning we're making something die stone cast, also has a base. Again, the bases are custom constructed for the Goletti Articulator. The Goletti does everything. 2 sheets of pink, tough base plate wax need to be out. You only really need to use 1, and you'll learn how to fold the pink, tough base plate wax and then fit it to the upper jaw and trim it custom to that patient's upper jaw. And the patient's upper jaw is on the maxillary master die stone cast. So you gently place the warm wax very slightly on the maxillary cast and cut everything extra away so it fits beautiful onto the teeth. You need a hot water bath that was turned on first thing in the morning. I walk in sometimes, nobody turned on the hot water bath. That will be the facility assistant's job right in the beginning of the day. But if you're the TMD assistant and the bath is not on, oh my God, run some hot water immediately, put it in the hot water bath and turn the hot water bath on so it will be warm and ready. Otherwise, we're delayed. Large scissors, cheap, large, regular scissors are used to make cuts. The black Sharpie marker, that is used to put a dot on the patient's chin. The sharp number 2 pencil, sharp means go use the sharpener, that's used to draw lines on the patient's teeth in order to teach the person where the bite position is, that the therapeutic bite position. A large patient hand mirror. Much of this appointment, probably 10 to 20 minutes of the appointment, is the TMD assistant working with the patient to alligator open up and down exactly repetitively, coming always back exactly to the therapeutic bite position. And the patient will look at the lines, pencil lines on the teeth with the mirror, and you'll encourage, you say, no, that's too far back, come forward, great. Now tap, tap just a little bit, great. Now open a little bit more. Tap, oh, no, you went too far forward. Let's do this again. Tap, tap a little bit, great. Open wide, great. Bite, wonderful, you got it. And let's keep on doing this, open and bite and bite. And what you're teaching them, the alligator bite right below the therapeutic bite position, it's going to be important to know this and do this and work with the patient. And then a laboratory knife is needed very often to clean up or trim the casts. Now, the cast should have been trimmed before and properly studied, but I'm going to say 50% of the time there are problems on the cast that the assistant was brain dead and didn't inspect the cast beautifully and just brought it in incorrectly and can cause a lot of problems. So I'll need that lab knife to correct the cast if I see a problem. So obviously you're going to prepare the room of the operatory before the patient is seated. And this is probably one of the biggest problems that I see. For some reason, the dental assistants don't have a sense of time. One particular guy in the office has no sense of time. And it would be terrible if he was the train conductor who sends the train out and back, because the train would always be wrong. You have to have a sense of time. One of the things that was important in trains in America is they bought pocket watches for all of the conductors, and they had the same pocket watch running at the same time so that the trains could come in and out correctly. But there has to be a sense of time. You have to prepare the operatory, clean and prepare it before. So you have to say, well, hey, this guy is being seated at 10. That means that at 9:50, I need to go in and clean the operatory and get everything ready so that at 10, I can seat the patient at 10. And what most assistants do is 10 o'clock comes, then they seat the patient, then they do backwards, clean up the operatory and get everything ready. Wrong. You should have everything ready before seating the JRT TMD patient. Everything should be there and ready. So before seating the patient, the attending, meaning the assigned or attending TMD assistant, carefully and thoroughly inspects the maxillary and mandibular diastone master casts and makes any corrections before mounting the master cast on the Goletti Articulator. This is often done earlier in the morning, but it can be done just before, but I prefer earlier in the morning. I like the upper and lower diastone cast mounted in maximum intercuspation very, very carefully without breaking anything. The attending TMD assistant gently mounts the maxillary and mandibular master cast on the Goletti Articulator, very clean, wonderful, polished articulator in the patient's maximum intercuspation. This is their bite where the cusps fit together, lock and key. The attending TMD assistant customizes a sheet of hard base plate wax for this JRT TMD patient's maxillary arch. Notice this is before. So if you haven't prepared the wax, you didn't do your job. And it's just as easy as that, right? If it's not pre-cut and prepared, you didn't do your job. And it's supposed to be before the patient's seated. The custom prepared wax wafer is called a wax construction bite. And you'll hear that particularly in ortho. It's a wax construction bite. The attending TMD assistant places the customized pre-prepared wax construction bite in the patient's labeled laboratory pan. There should be a laboratory pan out with a patient's name and the purpose of this visit and what's going to need to be done. And you need to be able to use these lab pans. The labels are in commonly asked questions under forms, and then so go and look at them, print a few out, understand what the labels say. Now, there is a whole course on the POHG visit, and the rules of the POHG visit also apply to the JRT appointment. Even though it's not a hard guard, we're going to go through the same procedures that we normally do. However, the purpose of today's visit is to get the jaw relations done, the wax bite at the new therapeutic position. Hurry, hurry, that's what the purpose is. We don't want to be what we call distracted and answering patient questions because we won't get what we need to get done. Then the patient will be mad at us for not getting in the real TMD appliance, because the soft guard is not the real appliance. I'm going to repeat. The soft guard is not the real appliance. The soft guard is not the real appliance. Patient starts making complaints about the soft guard. That is not the real appliance. Many of these complaints will be taken care of with the hard Mora. And so we want to get that Mora made. That's what the patient really wants us to do, but they don't know that yet. But you need to just be sure that you don't get mucked up in patient complaints, because we want that Mora in as soon as possible. So the JRT TMD patient is seated, and the TMD assistant takes mandibular range of motion measurements, right? You do mandibular range of motion measurements at every visit. Oh my God. People say, well, we have a person with a soft guard seated, but they're not a real TMD patient. Do I need to take mandibular range of motion measurements? Yes, we take mandibular range of motion measurements at every single visit. Have you ever noticed how when you go to a physician's visit, they always take vital signs? They weigh you, they take your temperature, right? And they take your pulse. They do this every single time. We, as TMD specialists, we do mandibular range of motions at every visit, no matter what. And please do not get into a long discussion or any discussion reviewing the patient's self-evaluation of TMD progress until after the JRT appointment is completed. Our task today is to win the ball game, not have a conversation on the sidelines. We want to win the game. What is the purpose of the visit? To get the upper and lower casts mounted in the Goletti at the therapeutic bite position so we can make an appliance. That's the purpose of today's visit. We don't want to be distracted and to do other things. Please, I don't know how to express this, because sometimes you'll get this caring, loving dental assistant wants to talk, and then we never get what we need done, period. What do we need to get done at this visit? Determine the therapeutic bite position, record the therapeutic bite position with a wax construction bite, then mount the upper and lower master guidestone casts on the Goletti in the bite position. The Goletti will remember that bite position in 3 dimensions in space. So most of the time, this is not that difficult a thing to do. We'll be determining or finding the TMD patient's therapeutic bite position, the therapy we're going to be using for the diagnostic appliance. They're going to bite, B-I-T, like I bite you in the leg. They're going to bite into this appliance, and the appliance is going to fit into the upper teeth so they actually have a bite. So the brain doesn't know that that's plastic. So when the brain bites into hard plastic, it thinks it's teeth. And so we're fooling the brain into believing that that's the bite. And there's a whole bunch of things that happen when you put the correct bite into position. And the correct bite's the therapeutic bite, therapy bite. So the TMD patient is seated with her back straight up and down, and sometimes I'll do this standing. And technically, it's probably best to do it standing with the head in the correct position, although the bite position is the same whether you're standing or moving your head around. That's a difficult concept, and we'll get that a little bit later, but the therapeutic bite position is one position, how the upper and lower jaw is positioned against each other. And that's the one we determine. We only know one bite position. That is the therapeutic bite position. When the person moves their jaw left, right, we don't know what that is. We are not recording that. So we don't know what it is. But we do know that the upper and lower jaw fit together exactly into the therapeutic bite position because we had the patient actually bite into the wax at that real position. So it's true. The patient is asked to very slowly slide her jaw forward until the anterior incisal edges are close to end to end. There's a lot of craziness with this that we could get into in discussions, but it's almost always end to end because the upper jaw should have been more forward, and but it's almost always end to end. And I like to put my finger on the upper teeth and the lower teeth so I feel them exactly, the same surface. The patient's asked to hold this end-to-end position. So please hold that for a minute. Then the dental assistant then retracts or pulls the lips open, the TMD lips, to see if the maxillary labial frenum and the mandibular labial frenum are vertically aligned with each other. They have to be right above and below each other, aligned exactly. The mandibular and maxillary labial frenums, labial means lip, labial, lip, are anatomical structures in the body that are supposed to be aligned, right? They tell you the true midline of the upper jaw and the true midline of the lower jaw, and you're just lining them up because when the patient bites down, very often those labial frenums move left or right, twisting the lower jaw to one side or other, right? It's like taking a horseshoe and twisting it out of alignment. In most cases, the patient will be asked to slide her jaw to the right or to the left until the two freni are aligned. Sometimes they go right into the bite. It's amazing after wearing the soft guard for a period of time. What is interesting is that when most people slide forward, they go into their bite, right? It's just really interesting. If the patient could slide into a worn out position on the incisal edge that's locked, place the patient in this position. So you'll see that the teeth have these grooves, and the upper groove and the lower groove, they fit together. And why do they fit together? The patient has been grinding in this position over and over. They are actually wearing their teeth down because they're going forward to the left or going forward to the right, and they're wearing their teeth down in a very, very specific lock and key fitted together position. This happens, maybe 1 out of 5 patients, and look for this if you can see it. And it will show you where the patient is supposed to be, because the patient is attempting to protect the right and left condyles, mandibular condyles in the joint, trying to pull those condyles forward off of the ear and crushing all the tissues behind the bone, behind the condyle. Very interesting. This is just a natural thing. You're seeing nature and you're observing nature. And very often when you fit these upper and lower teeth into their locked position, guess what? The freni, maxillary labial frenum and the mandibular labial frenum match. It's magic. Magic. Okay, so now you have determined the best bite, the best position. They've slid forward, moved right and left. The frenums are aligned. Everything is aligned. And we know that the condyles are most probably aligned also. The word condyle means the knob of bone that's at the end of the mandible that fits into the joint, the temporomandibular joint. So the next thing we have to do is begin coaching. A coach helps people out, the patient's opening and closing movement. So the human jaw rotates and translates, so it opens in a circle and then moves forward like a sliding door. So the opening in a circle is kind of like a door, and then the Translation, which is forward and back, is kind of like a sliding door. But when we're taking the bite in the job relations appointment, we want the patient to just simply rotate like a door up and down below the therapeutic bite position into the therapeutic bite position where they're touching, open, not touching, close, and each time coming exactly back to the determined therapeutic bite position. That's why it's important that the assistant gets involved in very clearly, precisely knowing what the established bite position is. You need to start understanding how the teeth fit together in the therapeutic bite position so that you don't go 2 millimeters to the right wrong, too far forward wrong, too far backward wrong. So it has to be exactly at the bite position determined by the dentist. And when you get good, you're going to start being able to do this, and so you'll do it and take the bite, right? And then come in and have the doctor verify. And then you'd be amazing. You're amazing. You become really a Buddha TMD assistant, and you become extremely valuable also, especially if you make these appliances. I mean, if you're determining the bite position, which is not super complex, you can learn how to do it in a week, I bet. And then you go ahead and determine all that while you're beginning. Probably for the first month, you want the dentist to check every single one to see if you're making mistakes. Then once you have confidence in the bite positions, then you can just seat the patient, move the jaw into position where everything's aligned, teach the patient open and close, take the bite in that position. It's the right position because you were the one that practiced, and then mount the cast and the Goletti. But you have to coach the patient. You have to work with the patient. And this is what you're going to do next. Great. So once you have determined either you've done it or the doctor's done it, or you're always a team. You're always a team. Particularly when you first begin, you and the doctor together are going to be determining the doctor will determine the bite position. You'll see it, learn it. And then after a little while, you'll learn it so well, you'll be doing it, but he'll come in to verify. Always, he verifies it. You have to work together. Then as you get even better and better, he doesn't have to come in to verify it until you've done the wax bite. Then he verifies it. And that's when you're really good. You're good if you can repetitively get the correct therapeutic bite without the doctor in the room, record the wax bite, and then mount it, and he comes in to see if it's correct. That is wonderful. You would be awesome. So once the therapeutic bite has been determined, the TMD assistant must work with the patient one-on-one to teach the patient to repeatedly bite up and down into the therapeutic bite position. And the patient is biting with a hinge bite, a rotation up and down, no forward and backward translation, up and down rotation. Using a sharp number 2 pencil, mark a vertical pencil line on a maxillary tooth and while the patient's in the therapeutic bite, and then draw a corresponding vertical pencil line immediately below the maxillary pencil line you just drew so that they match. Verify that this is the patient's therapeutic bite. Take some time because you're going to be teaching that patient how to open up and down in this bite. Make sure it's the right bite before you teach. Place the chair light into the patient's teeth. Give the patient a large hand mirror. It's a cheap one that should be clean. It has to be clean. And show the patient the 2 vertical pencil lines in place. Next, ask the patient to slowly and gently bite up and down, keeping the 2 lines aligned, 2 pencil lines aligned, one on top of the other. So in other words, the patient taps first, just taps, and then the opening gets bigger, and then taps again, and the opening gets bigger until you can put a wax wafer through there, and they'll still bite in the right bite. Got it? And this is the starting point. This is what you're coaching. You're teaching them to do alligator bite, rotation, open, close on this therapeutic bite position. So during this whole coaching process, very slowly and with the patient looking at the mirror, slowly ask the patient to open more and more. So tap, tap a little bit. Okay, great, she's got it. Open a little bit more. Tap, tap. Great, she's got it. Open a little bit more. Oh, wait, she can't get it. Let's go back to the previous one. Tap, tap, she's got it. Now open a little bit more. Tap, tap, she's getting it. Move to the left. Let's see how it's move to the left. Great, that's where it is. Move to the right. Great. Now go forward. You're going behind. Go forward. Yes, that's where you're supposed to be. And you're coaching. Each time they make a mistake, you tell them that's wrong, but don't say that's wrong. Say go forward. And eventually they're going to learn this up and down bite at the therapeutic bite that you and the doctor determine. Now, when the patient can accurately, it means every time in the right place, and repetitively over and over and over, return to the pre-marked pencil lines, you are next ready to take the wax construction bite in this therapeutic bite position. So you're going to take the wax construction bite in this bite position. You're recording how that jaw is in the mouth and putting it onto the articulator exactly the same way. So the articulator is an exact duplication, a copy of the real patient, right? This is the whole idea, that the mounted Goletti articulator with the casts are positioned exactly the same as the person's real mouth at the therapeutic bite position. You know this, and you're going to spend this time trying to record this bite correctly and putting it onto the articulator correctly, so that when we make the appliance, it's going to fit into this bite precisely and excellently because you recorded it accurately. So when the patient can accurately and repetitively return to the pre-marked pencil lines, you're next ready to take the wax construction bite in this therapeutic bite position. Now, since the patient knows her bite, theoretically, in theory, she does, but there's going to be a lot of things going on that are going to prevent her perhaps from biting into that once the wax is in, but you still have to keep yourself being aware of what's going on. Since the patient knows her bite, theoretically, she'll bite into the wax at this therapeutic bite position. But she's going to need coaching when she's biting in the wax position, because there's a whole bunch of stuff she's going to do automatically without her knowledge, and she might screw it up. Now, she's not a bad person, and she's fighting her body, and be careful. Okay, so up to this point, you have checked all the models, and the Goletti's ready. You have determined the bite position. Either the doctor's determined it, or you determined it, but ultimately is verified by the doctor, unless you become an expert. But everything's ready. The bite position is ready. You know the patient can open and close at the therapeutic bite position. You're next ready to take the wax therapeutic construction bite. This is the bite into the wax at the actual position. So the wax is actually recording the way that the bite is. The teeth are going to make indentations in the wax at the exact bite position, and then the die-stone master models will fit into those grooves that the teeth made, because the die-stone master casts are exact duplications, exactly the same as the actual patient. So now you're going to take the wax bite. So remember, now you're working with a real human being called our patient, and you want to don't be decorative. Don't say degrading comments. Always say positive comments. You want to first review what you'll be doing with the during the wax bite procedure with the patient. So Mrs. Jones, I'm going to put a piece of wax on your upper teeth, and then you're going to bite up and down. The problem is that your old bite, whenever you bite into something, you automatically bite in your old bite position, and you're going to have to resist that and stay in the bite position that we were just working with. It's very important for you to know that. Take your time, go slow, and listen to me as as I talk. So the word awareness means to know what's going on. You're aware that there is a dog barking at you or ready to bite you. You're aware, you know it, all right? So you have to have a whole bunch of awareness, and the patient has to have the awareness of where her lower jaw is, and you're going to develop that, okay? So make sure the patient is holding a clean, large hand mirror and carefully watching her teeth as she bites down into the wax. Warm the pre-prepared wax wafer in the hot bath. You don't want it too soft, but you want it soft enough that the patient can bite easily into it. Place the warm wax wafer carefully right above the patient's maxillary teeth so it fits exactly over the maxillary teeth correctly. Then instruct the patient to slowly bite down into the wax that are on top of the maxillary teeth at the therapeutic bite position. This is the whole key. You're going to be saying, oh, no, no, stop. That's too far back. Go forward, go forward. Yes, yes, yes. And then go to the right. Yes, yes. Good. Now look in the mirror. Make those lines line up. Great. All right, now bite slowly. Stop, stop. Take your time. We're going to take your time. So you're going to be working with that patient one-on-one to teach them to bite into that wax correctly at the bite position, not where they want to go, where they have to go, where you've taught them. Now, most patients will begin biting down too far backward. They will not go forward into their therapeutic bite. Almost always, the therapeutic bite is forward. The problem the patient has is that their bite is backward. As they move their bite backward, it jams their joints. So we are establishing a pressure-free jaw joint by moving the teeth forward. But most patients will begin biting down too far backward since they've been biting this way for years and years and years. And there is something called a computer program inside their brain called neuro means nerves, neuromuscular means muscle, neuromuscular engram, E-N-G-R-A-M. And that is a computer program that runs the jaw. And it always bites back into the teeth. So you're going to have to you're fighting a natural program. So you're going to have to be aware of what's going on all the time, watch where the patient's biting, talk to the patient, caution the patient, and let the patient know you're going to want to bite as soon as you feel something to bite in, you're going to want to bite backward because that's what you've been doing. So please resist this, this urge. So while she's biting, you ask the patient to move her lower jaw forward until it matches the pencil lines that you put on the upper and lower pencil lines. Say, move, no, don't bite forward. Push your jaw forward. Nope, a little bit more. Right, okay, great. Now you're right below the pencil lines. That's fantastic. Now, as soon as you bite into the wax, you're going to want to go back, but resist that. Stay forward and stay right under the pencil lines. Ask the patient to continue to slowly close down while you constantly watch the closing movement to be sure it's okay of that patient's mandible. So, this is a heads up, complete attention type thing. You are like intensively watching the patient bite, because if the patient bites into the wrong position, you've got to throw that wax bite out and get a new one because it's wrong. Now, when patients bite down and they actually touch their anterior teeth in the therapeutic bite position, they tend to want to open. I don't know what it is, but they tend to want to open. So you kind of order them the same way an officer would say, put your hands on the car, don't move, keep your hands on the car. And so when the patient's teeth touch, order the patient not to move. It's an order, like a policeman's order. Stop, hold it right there, do not move. I'm going to put my hand in your mouth, do not move. When you're sure that the patient's not moving, insert your thumb and forefinger in the posterior tooth areas. Using your right hand, your thumb is going to go on the patient's right side, your forefinger on the left. You're going to push the warm wax into the teeth so that it will fit beautifully onto the teeth. You're molding the wax onto the teeth. And press that warm, soft wax inward on the teeth on both sides, and you're trying to fill that gap between the upper and lower teeth with the warm wax. So the patient's in the therapeutic bite, you push the wax in, you're waiting a moment or two because it's cooling, and then ask the patient to slowly open and vertically, and then very carefully remove the wax without pushing on it or crushing it or distorting it. Remember now, it has to fit the teeth, and if you push it, you'll distort it, it won't fit again. So ask the patient to slowly open and then very carefully remove the wax without crushing or distorting the wax. Be very careful. Bring it to the sink and immediately run cold water on the pink base plate wax so that it will harden. And it will harden when it gets to room temperature. It becomes real hard. Now, one of the things you have to do is see when you put the wax on the master models, you need to be able to see the teeth, right? So that you got to know that the teeth fit into the wax. I don't know how to emphasize this. I want you to memorize this. The teeth of the models must fit precisely into the wax indentations made during when you take the bite. So next thing is you want to trim the flash posterior to the teeth, in the posterior teeth, and that's laterally sticking out of the buccal cusps. Now, in other words, you'll look at the bite and you'll see the bite into the teeth, and then on the outside, you'll actually see extra wax. And you want to cut that off. Why? Because when you put later the bite into on the mounted cast, you want to be able to see with your eyes the upper and lower teeth going into the bite precisely. If you've got wax on the outside, you can't see how the teeth fit in. You must be able to see the facial surfaces of the posterior teeth when the wax is inserted into the mouth, right? So you're looking to see if you can evaluate where the teeth are in the wax, right? Carefully reinsert the cold, trimmed, remember you cut the excess off, wax wafer back in the patient's mouth, and again, slowly have the patient bite back into the therapeutic bite position, and you could hold it there for a little bit of time, right? Tap, tap, up and down, tap, tap, tap. All right, so you remove the bite from the patient's mouth, and you place the wax, onto the maxillary diastone cast, and you look to make sure that it is fitting beautifully onto the teeth and that it's not off of the teeth, that there's nothing obstructing or in the way, preventing the wax from going all the way down. Now, sometimes you'll have bubbles on the cast that will not allow the wax to seat all the way, so you might have to cut the bubbles off or push the wax down. But ideally, the cast should be exactly a duplicate of the patient's real teeth. So you place the wax on the maxillary diastone cast, and use your eyes to check to be sure the wax precisely fits the maxillary teeth with no gaps, everything fitting exactly, tailor-made, just fitting incredibly well. And then a lot of times there's extra wax going past the back teeth, and that could actually, that extra wax could push on the stone and prevent you from biting all the way down into the cast, prevent the cast from seating all the way. So cut off all the excess wax that goes posterior to the last teeth. You don't need it. You're mounting these using the teeth. And then replace the wax on the maxillary cast and reevaluate to see if everything's fitting beautifully. So as I said, the first step is making sure that the therapeutic bite fits the upper teeth. The second step is to make sure that the lower part of the therapeutic bite fits the lower teeth beautifully, and just the teeth, right? You do this by doing the same thing as you did for the upper. Place the other side of the wax bite, the mandibular side of the wax bite, on the mandibular teeth. Check to be sure that the wax bite precisely fits the mandibular teeth. It should fit beautifully, like a glove, on each tooth. Cut off any excess that goes posterior to the last teeth, right? And now, when that's been achieved, You know the upper cast fits beautiful into the wax. You know the lower fits beautiful into the wax. That wax now is going to hold the upper and lower teeth in the exact same position as the patient's mouth, at the exact same position of the therapeutic bite in the patient's mouth. You are now copying that patient exactly. You are making a precise upper-lower relationship that occurs in the mouth, all right? So now you're ready to use the therapeutic wax bite with the upper and lower cast to mount the upper and lower master die stone casts on the Goletti Articulator in the patient's personal and custom therapeutic bite position. And this Goletti Articulator is magic. It will hold the upper and lower teeth exactly in the same way that they are in the patient's actual mouth. And if you do a wonderful job, when I go to deliver my mandibular orthopedic repositioning appliance, the MORA, the plastic TMD appliance, it will fit beautifully right then. In other words, I put it in the mouth, patient bites down, they bite down into the therapeutic bite because it's exactly recorded well, and hallelujah, no time to deliver it. If, however, there's lots of extra time, at some point in the process, something happened bad, and then you're going to have to use your brain to figure out what exactly happened bad and prevent it from happening again in the future. Wow, all right, so now we're getting to the step where we actually place the models onto the Goletti Articulator, so the Goletti Articulator can permanently record the relationship of the upper jaw to the lower jaw, a relationship in 3D. 3D means left and right, forward, back, up and down, exactly the same as the mouth. You've gone through the whole process at this point of getting a very good, accurate therapeutic bite at the correct bite position in wax. You've trimmed your wax wafer so it doesn't interfere. You've checked that the wax bite fits the upper model. You've checked that it fits precisely the lower model, and you've hand articulated the upper and lower casts. Hand articulate means with your hands, not with the Goletti. You put the upper and lower casts into the wax bite together and held it and looked at there just to see that everything is fine. Now we're going to mount the die stone models. So you're going to adjust the Goletti Articulator so that it's loose as a goose and it can move everywhere, because you're going to want to move the upper cast around so it can fit into the lower cast. So you're going to adjust some of the parts of the Goletti. So you adjust the vertical holding adjusting bolt pin. It's a crazy name. There's different people have different names. I call it the vertical pin. They call it the holding adjusting bolt. Either way, you have to know the names, because if you ever order a part, you need to know what part you have to order, right? But this is the vertical pin, I call it, and it holds the upper element up and prevents it from closing. And it's located on the lower element of the Goletti. And turn it clockwise all the way down so it doesn't interfere with your initial mounting, okay? That's the first thing you do. Then you loosen the bolt for the wing nut. The wing nut is the nut that has wings on it. You'll see that. And you loosen it. And then you're also going to loosen the tension spindle, which is, if you turn it, it locks the side-to-side movement of the top element. And you should be able to freely move the upper master cast as you wish. The Goletti, of course, should be immaculately clean with no wax or acrylic on it. That's what you have to do. You maintain this. You're like a Ferrari mechanic. You need to make sure that your instruments are extremely clean and that you're proud of what you do. That's extremely important. Cleaning the Golettis between patients is an important duty of a very competent TMD assistant. This is what you do. You maintain your equipment beautifully. Well, now you're ready to place the upper master cast on the flat surface of the upper element. So the base of the upper diastone master cast is going to be flat. You had a model former, yellow model former, and then sometimes you trim it. It's very flat, and so is the metal flat. So it should fit beautifully together with no gaps between the metal and the bottom of the diastone. And check to be sure that the flat bottom of the upper master diastone cast is flat and touching that metal. It's supposed to be very precise. Now, the next thing is to tighten or slowly turn the upper element tension bolt. All right, I call it the maxillary locking screw. It moves in the middle. It's the claw that moves, and it locks the upper maxillary cast into place. So slowly turn the upper element tension bolt until the maxillary cast is tightly stuck without movement between the three claws on that upper element, right? Very important that it doesn't move. You use your hand. One of the first things I always test when I check you is to see if you've tightened that upper element bolt to where you can't move it anymore, right? Because if I come and move it, that means it might have slipped off while I'm working later, and I don't want that cast to fall off. It needs to be very, very securely held on that upper element. Now, you're going to be learning these terms. I had the diagram earlier, and then we're going to spend a little time later really getting into detail on that Goletti. You're not going to learn anything at once. It gets confusing. You're going to look at the video. You're going to mount a couple of these in with patients with me, and then you're going to go back and look at the video a second time, learning all the time as much as you possibly can. You'll get this, and hallelujah, because then you're going to be very valuable to me because we'll work together. You can you can prepare the maxillary, you can take the alginates. If you're expanded duty, you can do a lot of the impressions. You're going to take the upper cast. I'm probably going to take the lower cast. You're going to pour them up. You're going to trim them. You're going to put them in a base. You're going to assist me chair side. You're going to clean the Golettis and have the Golettis all ready. The patient, we're going to take a bite together. You're going to do the bite. You're going to learn how to train the patient, and you take the bite. Then you mount it on the articulator and come and get me, and I check your work. And I'm going to be so proud of you that you can do this. But it is what they call a precise activity. It's exactly right. There's no room for error. The bite is very specific. I don't know how to express this to you. You could be just a millimeter off to the left and it doesn't work well. You could be a millimeter back and it doesn't work well. The bite is very precise. You're going to learn that. And we'll do strength testing, what they call kinesiology testing, to verify positions. We don't use kinesiology to find the position, but we use it to verify the position. So people are actually stronger when they're in our bite. And you'll see sometimes where you're off just a millimeter. Think about how small a millimeter is, off one way, and it won't. And then you put it in the patient's mouth, they're not strong. And then you put it in the correct position, millimeter different, they're strong. And you'll see, and you'll become a believer. It's a hallelujah moment. Okay. All right, you're going to repeat the process with the lower cast. Now the lower element doesn't move, right? It's like solid. Only the upper element moves. But you're still mounting the lower diastone cast onto the same flat surface as the upper element, but except you're doing it on the lower. So place the lower master cast on the lower element. Check to be sure that the flat bottom of the lower master cast is flat and touching the metal precisely. Slowly turn the lower element tension bolt until the master mandibular diastone cast is tightly stuck and secure between the three claws of the lower element. All right, so you've got the upper cast mounted on the upper element, the lower cast on the lower element. The upper cast moves around because everything is not very tight. All right. So you place the wax construction bite on the upper cast. You know it fits beautiful because you've tested it. And then hand fit the lower cast into the bottom of the wax bite. So now the upper and lower cast are fit together into the wax bite, and they are being held by the upper and lower elements. You can take your left hand and squeeze the upper cast into the lower, holding the upper element in the lower. Gently squeeze the upper and lower elements together so that the cast fits snugly together. Then you tighten the wing screw slightly and slowly, just do that. And then tighten the other screw slowly. All right, until the upper and lower elements are held into a lock. And you just keep on repeating, tighten one, tighten the other, tighten one, tighten the other, making sure that nothing gets knocked out of place, right? Until you've got all of the screws tightened completely. And then you will adjust the adjusting bolt, the vertical pin, until it touches the upper the upper tail of the upper element.